The first time you hear it, it's so ordinary that you don't even question it. Your dog scratching at the back door, your partner calling you from the hallway, your child laughing over the baby monitor. Not thinking anything of it, you get up to check on the noise, only to find that your dog is already inside, your partner still at work, and your child fast asleep. You think? That's weird, but I must have just imagined it. You go back to doing your usual routine of chores, gathering up linens that need to be thrown in the wash. With your arms full, you begin to make your way through the house to the laundry room. As you do so, you just barely catch a glimpse of what you assume is your partner turning the corner from the hallway to the living room. Hurrying around the corner, you soon find that the living room is completely empty. Then you hear it.
Natalia, I'm home. I forgot my key. Can you let me inside?
Your blood turns to ice as you realize that this isn't the voice of anyone you know. Something is very wrong. It doesn't sound like your partner, your parent, your child, your sibling, or friends. In fact, it doesn't even sound human. Tonight, we're peeling back the veil on the eerie world of mimics, the creatures that wear our faces, echo our voices, and hope we'll let them inside.
Welcome back to Let's Get Haunted
with your host,
Nat Strawn
and Aly. Welcome back, Haunties, to episode number 239 of Let's Get Haunted. We are your ghost hosts, Aly and Nat, and over the next 1 to 2 hours, we'll be getting you extremely haunted. But before we get to that point, Nat, do you want to explain to anyone who might be new to our show and listening for the very first time what they can expect today and how the format of the show works?
Sure. Each week, me and my co-hosts take turns telling each other spooky tales. That means that this episode, Aly has prepared a spooky tale for me, and I have no idea what she's going to talk about. I just heard that hook, which was absolutely unsettling and gross, and I'm very terrified for where this episode is going to go. But if you don't love this episode, you can wait until the next week when it's my turn to present. We both have totally different styles, totally different ways of presenting, and so every other week you kind of get a little change, and it's nice to change it up. So this week, I'm going to be hearing the story that Aly has prepared for me, and I'll be providing commentary, and we'll be talking about the story together. And next week, I will be telling Aly a story. And that's what this is about, is it's getting haunted. We're getting haunted. We're having fun. And if you don't know how to have fun, you're going to find out today. I guarantee.
Life is a little bit more fun when you're a believer, we think. So I'm very excited to be talking to you about this truly terrifying topic of mimics. But before we get into it, I do have to address, are those new headphones?
You guys, it only took 6 years. I have new headphones on. I'm so obsessed. These are from Chloe. Chloe is a patron of ours, and she reached out to me and was like, Nat, I'm going to hook you up with some headphones. Choose which ones you want. And I immediately found these. And we had a whole conversation about it because I was like, is this too cringe? I have 2 kids. Can I pull off the cat ear headphones? And she actually gave me such a hype message and was like, my teenage daughter wears them and she loves them. Basically, we say, fuck it. You can do whatever you want.
That also is a good opportunity for me to let any newcomers know that we do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/c/Let's Get Haunted. At the very end of every single episode, we have something called closing credits where we shout out our patrons. So if you're interested in being shouted out, or if you would like to hear the extended cut of the intro for this episode, because because we also have a separate show that is Patreon exclusive where we just talk about things going on in our personal lives. And you're like, oh, that's boring. Why would I want that? You want that. Trust me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit talk, a lot of gossip, and a lot of very spooky, haunted things happening in
It's
our
messy.
personal lives. That's right. Well, Nat, are you ready to buckle the fuck up and be absolutely scared out of your mind as we dive into the world of mimics?
I'm so excited. Yeah, I have a little bit of knowledge on this topic, but not much because I feel like mimics kind of just started recently. Like I feel like I just found out about them on a reel or something in the last couple years.
I am going to be very interested to hear your personal opinions as we dive deeper into this topic. But as with all episodes, we have to start at the beginning. Part 1, what is a mimic? Today, we'll be taking our haunties through the lore behind the mimic, a type of shape-shifting paranormal entity known for taking on either the voice or the form of animals, humans, and even objects. The motive of the mimic is largely unknown. Are these just chaotic spirits playing a practical joke? Demonic entities harvesting souls? Wandering ghosts looking for a vessel in which to reside? Or hungry carnivores luring their prey before consuming them? On today's episode of Let's Get Haunted, we'll be looking into the origins of the mimic and even listening to several real-life accounts of people who have had the misfortune of encountering a mimic in the wild. Natalia, I know that you've already said you know a little bit about it, but what, if anything, are you familiar with? Like, how did you first come to find out about the topic or the idea of a mimic?
I can't remember the exact first, but I know the one that like really stands out to me is there's a creator. You guys, if you know who I'm talking about, tag them because I can't even remember who it is. But he does this bit where it's like he's a roommate that is your roommate in this haunted house. And so he's like, hey, man, yeah, just don't worry. Like, leave your rent check there. And then it'll be like the drawer like closes really quick. Like, don't worry about that. That's just, you know, the ghost. This is not a big deal. And then it'll like cut to him being like, hey, come in here. And then he's like, no, don't listen to that guy. He's not real. Don't make eye contact with him. You know, he does this whole bit where there's like a mimic of him. And he's like, no, that's the mimic. That's the mimic. Yeah, don't talk to that guy. He always tries to get you to go into the basement. That's how you know he's the mimic.
Are you okay over there?
Hey, I need your help. Come here real quick. I need your help.
Don't do that. Don't do that. No, this is not the doppelganger. Use the cross in the one I gave you. It's in your pocket.
And it's just like really silly but also really scary. Like I don't like the idea of something trying to lure you anywhere. First of all, no normal shit is happening for you to get lured to it. You know, like if you're not able to go without being lured, it's probably not a good place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like what is the ulterior motive of the mimic? Why is it trying to lure in the first place? And these are some of the questions we're going to be trying to answer today because I was reading thread after thread after thread on Reddit and Quora, and I was even looking at different TikTok videos of people that have talked about this subject and just scrolling through the comments to see what was on people's minds. And the consensus of what the mimic wants has not yet been reached. People are really confused about what these spirits want and why they're doing what they're doing. Some people say, oh, no, it's a harmless, practical joke, basically, where this mimic is just interacting with you because it's bored. Or no, the mimic itself isn't dangerous, but it can get you into dangerous situations. And so it's been a very interesting week researching this topic, and I am very curious to hear what theory you land on as we go throughout this episode, because every episode, if you're new to the show, always ends with the theories. But for people who might be listening and are like, wait, a mimic, I've never heard of that, but I've definitely heard of some shit that sounds similar, you're correct. Mimics definitely share characteristics with paranormal creatures we've covered in the past, such as doppelgangers, skinwalkers, wendigo, and even fairies, to name a few. But what makes a mimic different from these supernatural creatures is that a mimic can imitate almost anything. Your mother, your neighbor, your pet dog, your pet fish, and even your jewelry box. The key to differentiating between a paranormal mimic and the real-life version of whatever it's trying to imitate can often be very subtle. For example, if it takes on the countenance of your mom, it might choose the wrong hairstyle, glasses, teeth, or nose shape, but everything else will be spot on. If it takes the form of your beloved pet cat, it may generate a different eye color or different fur markings that take you a minute to figure out that you're not actually interacting with your cat. And if it decides to mimic your son's toy train set, for example, the train might have wheels that don't actually spin, or be missing key pieces like its smokestack. For whatever reason, some mimics seem to be more successful than others at imitating things, so these differences can range from being very subtle to very obvious. In one story of an encounter with a mimic found online, a teenager walked out into their hallway at night only to find a horrific mashup of their sister and mother that was looking at pictures hanging on the wall. In another story, a person walked through the woods and saw what looked to be their father standing unmovingly on the hiking path in front of them. This person did not know what they were looking at wasn't their father until they got about 5 feet away and noticed that the mimic didn't have their father's characteristic port wine stained birthmark on its face. In yet another story of a mimic encounter, a woman got up in the middle of the night to let what she thought was her dog in from the backyard, but just before turning the doorknob, she realized her actual dog was fast asleep on the couch in the living room.
That is so creepy. I mean, there's something really unsettling about something that you think is familiar not being correct. You know, it's kind of like you go, like, walk into a home that you think is yours, but then, like, the realization slowly sinks in that it's like a movie set because it feels like a trickster, right? It was like, why is something pretending to be my dad? What would the purpose of that be? It couldn't be good. I don't know why, but like the visual of like someone realizing their toy train was like a ghost is really scary. What is the toy train ghost gonna do?
That's okay. I'm so glad you brought that up. The inanimate object mimicry makes me so fucking scared. Like, way more scared than I would be by somebody that was imitating my partner, for example. And you would think it wouldn't be the case, but I think what makes the idea of imitating inanimate objects so frightening is that you don't inspect them that closely on a day-to-day basis. Like, if I walked into my kitchen and my partner was making something at the stove, the second that it turned around, I would be like, you're not my partner. Like, I've been with you for years. I recognize you. Like, there's something off. But if I were just walking into my brother and sister-in-law's home and picked up a toy train on the ground, I don't think I would immediately clock that it wasn't what I thought it was. So I think for me, that's why it's the scariest. But also this story where somebody walked into a hallway and they saw a person in their hallway looking at pictures on the wall. And at first they're like, is that my mom? And then it turned around and they realized that it was something imitating characteristics from both their mom and their sister. And oh my God, that story is so scary. In the story, the person was like, yeah, it turned around and it had, like, my mom wears round glasses, my sister wears square glasses, and the creature had morphed into something that had round glasses on the top and square on the bottom. Like, it didn't know how to disguise itself yet, and that just like gave me the chills.
What are they doing, these creatures? Like, that's I don't like this.
I know, that's the thing. Like, what is it doing? It's trying to scare her, I would guess, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just really bad at doing what it wants to do, and maybe it's not trying to scare.
Yeah, maybe it's just camouflage. Okay, so I'm thinking, like, you know, a lizard would try to camouflage into a wall to avoid getting eaten or something, or like a certain octopus or like a cuttlefish might change their shape and might change their skin to be camouflaged to like fit in with certain coral or something as like self-preservation. It's not always to attack, right? So like it could be camouflage to hide, but still hiding.
That's a great point, though.
Hiding is not, what are we hiding from? You know, because it's like if you're a monster essentially and you're hiding from something, I should be hiding from it too.
Absolutely. I love where your head's at, because I think there's not enough discourse online about the possibility that this is just like some sweet little creature that's trying to fit in. Like, I don't know, there's something kind of cute and relatable about that. But mimics don't just limit themselves to imitating physical appearance. They can also choose to mimic sounds and voices. Have you ever heard a crying baby outside your house at night? It might be a serial killer, but it also might be a mimic. Have you ever been falling asleep at night only to be startled awake by what sounds like your partner yelling your name from downstairs? It could just be a hallucination. Or it could be a mimic. Has a package you didn't order ever shown up on your porch? It could be a simple mistake made by the postman. Or it could be a mimic hoping that you'll take him inside and unwrap him.
Ew. Ew. Wait, didn't you once have like an auditory hallucination in your house where like you heard someone say your name downstairs?
I did. And there are tons of stories while I was researching this of people being like, there's a mimic in my house. Every night at midnight, I hear something calling my name from the basement. And I know there's no one in there because the first few times it happened, I went down there and I looked and I called the police and there's never anybody in my house, but I hear it. And when I had that happen to me, which for people who are new to the show, a couple years ago, I was falling asleep, and right as I was about to fall asleep, I hear my name, like my full government name, clear as day, coming from downstairs. But I don't think it was a voice I recognized. I could be wrong. I'll have to go back and listen to that episode, but it was just weird. And I went downstairs and I looked around and there was nothing there. And I was like, okay, well, historically, I don't have a great track record with sleep. I suffer from insomnia, and I Googled it, and the first thing I saw was exploding head syndrome, which is where, like, the second you're going to fall asleep, you feel like you're falling and you jerk yourself awake, or you hear a loud noise and your eyes shoot open. So it is a known phenomenon, but how do you tell the difference between a known phenomenon and something paranormal going on? It's very creepy. Again, I just really got the chills when I was thinking about, okay, somebody delivers a package for your neighbor on your front porch. Not super unusual. You take it inside, you text your neighbor, or you go take it over there the next day. But what if it's a mimic?
But what does
And
the
it's
mimic
just trying to
look
get
like?
inside.
Yeah, but then you unwrap it and it's just a pack. Like, what does the mimic, when it's in its true form, look like?
Unfortunately, nobody knows for sure. Some people say, oh, the mimic is invisible. It's just a spirit. And so you'll open a package and it'll be empty and you'll be like, that's weird. But it's actually the mimic is loose in your house. Some people say that the mimic is an alien. Some people say it's a cryptid. Some people say it's a traditional looking ghost, like with the white sheet over its head. I don't think anyone has the answers, which is very, very frustrating. And the main question I had when researching this topic was, what is the purpose of the mimic? What is its desire or agenda? What does it hope to gain out of its impersonation and trickery? And in order to answer that, I decided to first look at folklore about other deceptive doubles before drilling down on mimics specifically. Here's a gross fact that's sure to haunt your dreams. Did you know that most bed sheets harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat? I had to learn that fact, and I hate it, so I have to pass it on to you so that I'm not suffering alone in silence. And isn't that really the purpose of our entire show? But I'm not just here to ruin your night and give you a problem. I'm also here to offer a solution, because I am nothing if not benevolent. Today's episode is sponsored by Miracle Made. Miracle Made bedding is designed to fight bacteria and stay cleaner for longer with silver-infused fabrics that actually prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth. Thanks to their antibacterial silver technology, Miracle Made sheets stay cleaner and fresher up to 3 times longer than regular sheets. That means fewer odors, fewer wash cycles, and way less laundry. And they feel just as good, if not better, than sheets you'd find at a 5-star hotel. And I may not have stayed at many 5-star hotels, but I really do feel that way. I sleep on a set of Miracle Made bed sheets every single night, and I have no complaints. Upgrade your sleep or give the gift of better rest. Go to trymiracle.com/haunted to try Miracle Made bed sheets today. You'll save over 40%. And when you use promo code HAUNTED, you'll get an extra 20% off, plus a free 3-piece towel set. They make an absolutely amazing gift, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee, you've got no reason to not give them a shot. That's trymiracle.com/haunted, and be sure to use code HAUNTED at checkout so they know we sent you. Thanks, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this week's episode. And that brings us to Part 2, Origins. Long before the term mimic was applied to paranormal beings, many cultures had stories about supernatural doubles and shapeshifters that impersonate people or animals. Our listeners who have been with us since the beginning will likely be familiar with the concept of a doppelganger, which we covered all the way back in episode 9 of our show. In that episode, we went into the history and most famous stories associated with the term doppelganger, and we also covered a very spooky story of a hauntee, aka one of our listeners, who saw her own doppelganger on episode 5 of our Halloween miniseries, What's Haunting You, that we release each October. Because we've already covered doppelgangers in depth, we won't be going past the surface level today, but for those who want a refresher, the idea of a doppelganger can be traced back to the 1700s. The English language concept of an apparition of a living person used the term fetch in Francis Gross's Provincial Glossary, which was published in 1787. And the German loanword doppelganger, meaning literally double walker, gained popularity through Catherine Crowe's 1848 book called The Night Side of Nature. These beings were believed to herald death and looked like the person they duplicated. So basically, long story short, if you're walking through the town and you see your mother's doppelganger, and then you get home and you realize she's been home that whole time, people back in the 1700s thought seeing a doppelganger meant this person that's still living is on its way out. And so I'm seeing like a shadow of their spirit before they actually become a spirit, if that makes sense.
That's super fucked. It also makes me wonder, because folklore, usually comes from like real life experiences. Back in the day, like, did people just look more like each other? Like, was it more common to see a doppelganger of yourself because there was less globalization? So it's like in the village, there might be several people who look like you that you've never seen before.
Oh, that's a good point, too. I know that when I was in high school, and I think I told this story on episode 9 of our show, but when I was in high school, every once in a while, my friends would be like, hey, I saw you in that hallway. Like, what were you doing in that hallway? And I'd be like, what? I wasn't in that hallway. I was in class. Or someone would be like, hey, I walked down the hall and I waved to you and then I realized it wasn't you. It was some other girl. So many people were telling me this, like people that I was just acquaintances with, people that I was friends with. And I was like, I want to meet this girl. What does she look like? Is she ugly? Because then I'm going to be real offended that people are like, I saw your twin, but it wasn't you, And so I was looking through the yearbook with some of my friends and we could not find this girl anywhere. And so I don't know. I didn't die, at least not yet. I mean, I guess it could be a bad omen 20 years in the making, but I think that would be super strange if that was the case. But yeah, so I don't know, but that is one idea of a doppelganger. And maybe if we take that idea and apply it towards a mimic, which is similar but different, maybe we could be like, okay, mimics can't actually harm you, but maybe they're harbingers of bad luck or a bad omen, kind of like the Mothman is.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, I think in general, okay, if we think of this from like a cinematic perspective, in general, in a movie, like when something creepy happens or something unsettling happens or something that like quote unquote like rips at your understanding of reality, it's usually a sign that something bad is going to happen. Like, I feel like it's a very common trope in horror movies when someone looks in a mirror and sees their reflection doesn't quite match up with what they're doing.
Right.
That's like happens all the time in scary movies. And it usually is a sign that something very bad is going to happen soon, So if life imitates art, then I could see how seeing your doppelganger, seeing your mimic, just having something sort of like quote unquote glitch in the matrix is like, yeah, a sign of foreboding bad omens to come.
Yeah, I think that's true, because even if you're a skeptic and you're like, oh no, this is just somebody with a mental illness seeing a hallucination. Okay, but isn't that still a bad omen if you're hallucinating?
Right.
Something is wrong either way. But let's talk about another possible motive. In Celtic, Germanic, and Norse folklore, stories of changelings, or supernatural beings masquerading usually as human children, are prevalent. In these tales, fairies or other paranormal beings abduct human children and replace them with their own young, or sometimes with older fairies who are substituted for the missing human infant. The human child is then raised as a servant by the fairies, while the changeling is raised by a human family where it never quite fits in. And this concept our listeners are probably familiar with as well because we briefly touched on some of these ideas during episode 74, The Witch's Seed, and during What's Haunting You, episode 1, where we interviewed an Irish woman who had been lured into a forest and gotten lost by a mimic voice, possibly, or a fairy voice, possibly. In this example, if we take these same principles of changelings and apply it to a mimic, then maybe the mimic just wants to be taken care of. Maybe it wants to replace whoever it's mimicking and steal its spot in reality for whatever reason.
Kind of like the cuckoo bird, you know?
Yes, exactly.
The cuckoo bird, for those of you who don't know, takes it, lays its egg in another bird's nest, and then the other bird will raise the cuckoo chick. And then eventually the cuckoo chick kicks all the other chicks out of the nest, effectively, eliminating competition. And the bird just thinks like, hey, this is my strongest chick, and I'm gonna, feed it and love it as my own. And that's where the word cucking comes from. Did you know that?
Is it really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Like a cuckold situation?
Yeah.
I mean...
Wow, guys, this is a very educational podcast. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, you're going to leave here with some knowledge that is useless to you about mimics, but also some nuggets of truth, such as where did a cuckold get its name? I mean, that's a great dinner time conversation to be having this Thanksgiving with your family.
Total icebreaker.
I like the cuckoo bird analogy. What's kind of scary about that is maybe the stories of mimics that we hear about are only the unsuccessful attempts. Like, what if there have been successful attempts and we just don't know it because the mimic is really good at its job? So you could be living with someone who's not really your spouse or your son or your friend or your business partner or your mother or your father. I mean, if we really want to spin out of control, how do we know? It's kind of like that chart. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this chart. I'll throw it up on the screen for those of you watching the video version of this week's episode. But for our audio listeners, there's a very popular, I think it's World War I or World War II, diagram of a plane. And it shows all of the locations where the plane had been struck by enemy fire. And at the time, the makers of airplanes were like, okay, well, these are the spots that we really need to fortify because this is where we're more likely to be shot. But then what they actually realized is it was sort of survivor bias because the only planes they were looking at were the ones that ended up being recovered so that they could tell where it got shot. And what they really should have done was look at the planes that never made it home, that had crashed into a billion pieces, and fortify those spots.
Damn. Yeah, that's too complicated.
Too
for
deep.
Me. Yeah,
too
that's
deep,
honestly
too complicated.
It's looking too far ahead. They did fine. With what they did fine. They took a plane, they saw where it had been shot, and they fixed it, okay? That other way is just way too effective. God, that would be so fucking annoying if you had this, crazy project where you just finished and you're like, yeah, actually, we just spent $500 million and fortified all these planes, and and then someone's like, you know what? I've actually done some calculations, and I realized that what we really should have done is taken the planes that, sunk to the bottom of the ocean and picked them up and looked and saw what their weak spots were, because the surviving planes are not actually, and then that person would have just got shot. They would be like, you're ruining this for us.
Yeah, bro, this is just a job to me. I just refortify planes. I don't actually care. But to complete the analogy, maybe all of this effort we're going through today to understand and dissect mimics is actually a fruitless task, because we really should be interviewing the people that we don't know are mimics because their mimicry is so perfect. But to move on to another piece of folklore and see what the motives are of this creature, our listeners will also likely be familiar with the Native American folklore involving skinwalkers and wendigo, which have existed for thousands of years. To oversimplify a very nuanced topic that we don't have time to really dive into, Navajo legends describe skinwalkers as witches who can transform into animals and mimic voices to lure their victims to them. And in Algonquin folklore, the cannibalistic wendigo lures travelers by imitating human voices or cries of loved ones. While we have yet to dedicate an entire episode to either of these creatures, I bring it up now just to point out that stories involving the ability to imitate voices or forms have likely always existed, even if they didn't use the specific word mimic. Natalia, can you think of any other episodes where we've talked about mimic adjacent creatures?
I mean, doppelgangers, but we already said that, right? Okay.
Yeah. But every once in a while we have something like, what about, you mentioned an octopus earlier that turns into something.
Okay, yeah. But we didn't do an episode on that, did we?
Yeah, we did.
We did
The
an episode
black-
on octopus?
The black diver.
The black diver. Yeah, you're correct.
So in our episode on the black diver, we talked about a piece of modern folklore, honestly, where some scuba divers say that they have seen what appears to be a fellow scuba diver floating in the distance in front of them, and then they go up to it and they realize that there's nobody inside this scuba suit that they're seeing. And in some cases, people touch the fake scuba diver and it like erupts into black ink, which leads some people to wonder there are many species of octopi that can mimic fish or other creatures or coral. Could there be a species of octopus that has learned to mimic humans for whatever reason? I guess my whole point is there's a lot of different supernatural topics that deal with looking at something and you think you know what it is, and then later you're like, nope, I was wrong, and it's too late.
Yeah, that's creepy.
So now let's talk about the word mimic specifically. Using mimic to describe a paranormal creature or spirit that imitates something else in order to trick humans seems to be a lot more modern, like you mentioned earlier, Nat, than some of the other folklore we've discussed in the past. One of the earliest known uses of the name mimic to refer to a creature that imitates comes from Donald A. Wollheim's science fiction story titled Mimic, published in 1942. In Wollheim's book, a museum curator tells of mysterious cases of giant insects that camouflage themselves. During the course of the story, a corpse in a black cloak is discovered, and the narrator realizes that the body is not human at all. The cloak is actually a sheath that hides its wings. The long, strange arms on the corpse are actually insectoid forelegs, and the face of the corpse has no nose or mouth. In horror, the narrator realizes that the corpse isn't human at all, but rather a giant bug that has evolved to disguise itself as a human.
Ew.
Although this book is science fiction, it introduces the idea of using the word mimic as a term to describe a creature that hides amongst the humans by copying their appearance.
I don't know what it is about insects, but they just give me the heebie-jeebies. And I know that's like a very stereotypical girl thing, but I think it's like deeper than that, because I think psychologically my female intuition knows there's like something not quite right with insects. Like I feel like they just don't have a soul. You know what I mean? Like they're just I'm not like saying we need like a mass extinction of them. I understand that they're beneficial for our environment and stuff, but I just don't trust them. I don't know about them.
They're kind of creepy. Every once in a while, I'll see a TikTok of like a praying mantis that's dancing to Sabrina Carpenter or something, you know? I don't know if you've ever come across those on your FYP, but there's a lady that has a praying mantis and she dances behind it and it kind of moves to the beat. And it's sort of cute. But I'm also reminded of my very first experience being afraid of bugs. I was in elementary school, I was on the playground, and I saw this beetle. And it was very pretty, like iridescent, giant beetle, okay? And I stuck my hand down for it to climb on me so that I could get a closer look. And I remember being so fucking happy. It went on my hand and I was like, this is a beautiful bug. I can't wait to look at it. I love ladybugs. I bet this is similar. And I brought it up to my face and I fucking made eye contact with it. And for whatever reason, I just freaked the fuck out. I was like, ah! And I just remember flinging the beetle off of my hand and I just ran to the opposite side of the playground because there was something, and I really can't even describe what it was that made me afraid, but I remember so viscerally, it was something about its face and it just freaked me out. I was like, I don't want any part in this. So do they indicate death because insects flock to rotting corpses?
Oh.
Maybe that's why we feel that they're upsetting to us. Or is there an alien connection? Because there is a whole alleged alien race called insectoids that kind of look like a giant praying mantis. So is that why we're psychologically afraid of them? I don't know. But 4 years after Wollheim's book was published, a different author named Jack Snow published a novel entitled The Magical Mimics in Oz in 1946. In his book, the antagonists are described as quote-unquote magical mimics or shape-shifting creatures that live on a mountain. These entities can change into both humans and animals, but with a twist. In order to take on a new form, they need to step into the person or animal's shadow first. Once inside the shadow, they can copy the shape of whatever is casting the shadow. In the novel, the mimic sees an opportunity to invade the Kingdom of Oz by impersonating Dorothy and other characters. But the inhabitants of Oz can't be tricked for long, as the behavior of these magical mimics doesn't quite line up with those of the people they are mimicking. While the book is basically just fantasy fanfic playing off the 1900 novel The Wizard of Oz, it's another early literary example of mimics described as shape-shifting, deceitful beings. That is cool to me, that like all they have to do is step into a shadow and they can become whatever's casting the shadow. I kind of love that.
Yeah, I feel like that has some, I don't know, like visually that's very nice. That's like cinematic, like I say, you know, it's very nice to like think of something hopping into something else's shadow and then just replacing the thing that's making the shadow. It's like seamless almost.
Yeah, it gives it some order too, which in the past I know we've talked about. The nice thing about the paranormal usually is that it seems like there's rules and somehow that makes it feel safer. So I wonder if that's also why I like it, because it makes sense. Like, okay, so if it's high noon, I can't have a mimic impersonate me, so I'm safe to leave during hours that I don't have a shadow.
Ooh, that's actually like that would be like a really cool folklore story about like someone who only, you know, moves out of their house and goes to places like at high noon so they avoid getting taken by a mimic.
No, you're totally right. Like, somebody out there listening to this who's a gifted writer, please write a short story about like a zombie apocalypse type of scenario where the sole survivor that hasn't been taken over by the mimics yet can't leave the house to get supplies unless it's high noon. I think that would be a really cool concept for a movie or a book.
Or like on an overcast day or something, like when there's no sun. Yeah.
Oh.
Anyways, guys, it's a great idea. And
oh my God.
you have
That's
to
so
credit
true.
us.
Or you can only go out at night when it's like, when there's no street lights on or anything. Like, oh, you have to plan your route so carefully to not cast a shadow.
Dude,
I love that.
That's good. It's good.
Fast forwarding a few decades to 1977 now, the paranormal concept of a mimic really rose to popularity with the tabletop game Dungeons and Dragons. American game designer and author Gary Gygax co-created the game Dungeons and Dragons and published a book called The Monster Manual in 1977 that provided a list of possible creatures that could be encountered while playing the game. In the manual, Gygax lists the mimic in the alphabetical index and describes it as a shape changer that can, quote, perfectly mimic stone or wood, end quote, and masquerades usually as a door, chest, or piece of stonework. According to the website dndandbeyond.com, a mimic's traits are described as follows. Quote, shape changer. The mimic can use its action to polymorph into an object or back into its true amorphous form. Any equipment it is wearing or carrying isn't transformed. It reverts to its true form if it dies. In object form, the mimic adheres to anything that touches it, like glue. While the mimic remains motionless, it is indistinguishable from an ordinary object, end quote. Nat, I'm going to send you a picture of a D&D mimic, and I want you to describe it to our audience. I'm going to text you the photo. There you go.
Ooh, that is so scary. I hate this. That tongue is like disgusting.
Right?
This artist who made this is like really kind of perverse. Like that tongue is very like phallic looking, you know, and kind of like, I don't know, just this is nasty. So for those of you who are not looking at the visual version of this episode, it is I think they call these steamer trunks, or like the stereotypical treasure chest that a pirate would find, but it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 eyes from what I can see, but I would assume that maybe there's 6 eyes, like, and it has just so many teeth, and it looks like there's something purple inside of it, and it has this gross purple blue tongue that's sort of like flicked back towards itself like a snake. It's really gross. Yeah, and the trunk itself is kind of warped at the bottom. It like leaving you to believe that, yeah, it's not an actual solid object.
I guess these mimics in Dungeons and Dragons usually just imitate inanimate objects. They don't really imitate people or animals. It's like you see a door materialize in front of you. Do you turn the knob, roll the die to find out? And sometimes that door ends up being a mimic. And so if people touch it, like if you're trying to open the chest and it's not a real chest, it's a mimic, you can get stuck to it like glue, and then you have to try to find a way to unstick yourself. You can get eaten by it, you can die, and yeah, it's kind of just a monster, basically.
Ooh,
and
creepy.
This reminded me, Natalia, do you remember when I walked you through the meditative exercise to find your guardian angel in a previous episode of Paranormal Games to Play in the Dark, and at the top of the staircase, you saw a treasure chest? What if the treasure chest was a mimic, and your spirit guide is a mimic?
Is a mimic? That would be fucked. I mean, I guess, is it fine? I don't know. I still don't know what they do. Like, are they fine? Or
No,
did it
probably not.
Probably not. Did it co-opt my spirit guide? Like, did it take my spirit guide, or was it my spirit guide the mimic? Am I making sense? Like, did it steal?
No, that makes sense.
The position that I employed as my spirit guide, or is my spirit guide a mimic?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And I don't know the answer, but it could also just be that your spirit guide is like the Lost Dutchman or something, and he just appeared as a treasure chest, or maybe it was a gift left by your spirit guide. But I just thought it was creepy that, I don't know, because that's what I envision when I think of treasure chests. That's literally what I think of. And then the idea of opening a treasure chest and it's just a monster is very cool and creepy to me. But all of these examples I've given you so far on my quest to trace the origins of the mimic basically come from fantasy, sci-fi, fiction, right? But everything is about to change in the year 2000 when paranormal author Brad Steiger published the first edition of his book Shadow World: True Encounters with Beings from the Unknown. In this book, Steiger introduced a chapter entitled, quote, The Enigma of Spirit Mimics, end quote, which is basically a compilation of reports of entities that impersonate humans. Steiger describes spirit mimics as beings who wish to experience human emotions by impersonating different people. These entities pretend to be loved ones or even ourselves, interacting with victims for unknown purposes. Steiger distinguishes spirit mimics from other ghosts or demons and suggests they come from a shadow world that sometimes overlaps with our reality. This usage of mimic for a voice or form imitating spirit seems to be the earliest explicit paranormal application of the term. What do you think of that? That maybe some of these mimics are just us in a parallel universe, or beings in a parallel universe that impersonate humans because they just want to experience human emotions?
I mean, I don't know. It's still not right. Like, it doesn't sound as nefarious as, oh, we're here to eat your soul or whatever. But it's still weird. Like, it's still, I don't know. I don't know how to feel, because it sounds like this is like mimics can take so many different forms. And so the mimic that is a choo-choo train has a significantly different feeling for me than the mimic that is myself telling me to go down to the basement for some reason.
Right.
Yeah,
it's kind of like paranormal catfishing, to be honest. Like, some people catfish online because they want to feel love or friendship or power. And this is like a spirit that is catfishing humans by pretending to be somebody they love, usually, like someone they have fond feelings about. Even if the intention is not to eat or murder, hoodwink somebody into giving you their house or money or whatever, it's still not right, because it's very intimate. Yeah, it's dishonest, and it's very intimate to try to trick someone into thinking that you're someone very close to them.
But at the same point, like, the same thought is that I don't know what they're supposed to do, because, like, yeah, it's dishonest and I don't like it and I'm going to be angry if I find out, or scared. But if they ask me if they can do it, I'm also going to say no and be angry and scared,
Yeah.
So I feel like for the mimic, you just got to mimic and you just got to be yourself, because no one's going to give you permission,
Right. Or you got to not be yourself, After Steiger's book, the idea of so-called mimic spirits spread to hundreds, possibly thousands of paranormal paranormal blogs, podcasts, and message boards. These modern sources describe mimic entities as mysterious beings that mimic voices or appearances of loved ones, animals, and objects. They often emphasize small, uncanny differences, such as a human that looks perfect but is missing pupils, or a voice that sounds exactly like their mother, but with another voice layered on top of it. And these accounts advise people to not trust such encounters and to trust their gut if something doesn't seem right. And that brings us to part 3, stories of mimic encounters. Thanks to the internet, there is no shortage of creepy mimic stories for our reading and listening pleasure. And I've picked some good ones for us to look at today. Are you ready, Nat?
I'm so ready. Let's do it.
Perfect. So I'm going to send you a couple Reddit threads that I would like you to read.
Okay, this is on r/paranormal. u/littlekatie_e wrote, "There may be a mimic in our house. Not at all familiar with the supernatural, if this is indeed what we might be dealing with, which is the explanation that we're leaning towards. So this started when my boyfriend was over yesterday. He had picked me up from work and I went to shower. I was drying off when he opened the door and handed me my underwear. I told him that I appreciated the gesture, but I had underwear in the bathroom already. He also jokingly snapped at me with, 'You freaking called me from downstairs to bring you these. You better take them, woman.' I assumed he was joking, so I took the panties from him and told him to go back downstairs. Didn't think much of it. Next thing that happened was a couple of hours later. My roommate was getting ready to leave for a date with one of her friends when I heard her calling me from the bedroom to help zip her dress. I trotted over to her bedroom to find nobody there. Not only that, but when I saw her leaving the bathroom, she was wearing jeans and a tank top. Nothing that I had to zip. I told her that I heard her voice coming from the bedroom, and she just looked confused. She went and looked around. Her TV was off. Her computer was off. There was nothing in the room. The next bit came around 11 p.m. My boyfriend and I had been watching Netflix and I had a craving for ice cream, so we drove to go get ice cream. After ice cream, we sat and watched an acoustic show for about an hour and a half before heading home. When we got home, we went into the bedroom and fell asleep watching TV. We woke up around 7 a.m. when he had to leave for work. My roommate was already up and made a joke that we must have really been going at it the way you were shrieking last night. We did not have sex the night in question. I didn't know what she was talking about. When we were alone, we discussed what was happening. I was initially the one to draw the strange conclusion based on what was happening. The underwear thing, the dress thing, the shrieking thing. She's a big believer in this kind of stuff, so she seemed open to the fact. The last bit of weirdness came when we were doing our evening meditation. We're both Wiccan, and we could hear speaking from the hallway. It was between two people. We broke concentration and listened. I'm not dumb, so I considered it was an intruder. Then, clear as day, through the door, we hear, "Night, y'all," and a high-pitched giggle. Both of those things are what my roommate does and says when she passes by my room and I'm with my boyfriend at night. We lit some sage throughout the house while saying a prayer. I'm not sure if that'll do any good. We also want to have the house tested for carbon monoxide and mold. It's totally cool if you read this and don't buy it because I'm not 100% sure that I do either. Edit. No carbon monoxide detected in the home. Relieved? As of right now, we haven't experienced any other phenomena that we've taken note of, but we're still very much on high alert.
What do you think of that? Isn't that creepy?
Roommates are too haunted. I feel like the majority of scary stories that involve roommates have just really made me not trust people living in my home with me, you know?
If it's just you and your spouse and your kids, I feel like it's easier to control the situation. But when you introduce a third party with their own independent life and thoughts, it's like, what are they bringing into the home? Are they going to bring a serial killer in that they met on Craigslist because they're trying to sell a microwave? Like, it was very creepy. I chose that story because I really like that it wasn't just one person experiencing it. It was someone and their roommate sitting together in a room together, and they both heard the same thing coming from outside the door that wasn't there.
It's also weird that the voice was like, "Can you zip me up?" you know? It's just
Yeah,
like
or-
picking strange things to say.
Yeah, or like, can you bring me my panties? You know, there is something, it's just very intimate to be impersonating someone already. And then this story has some other intimate aspects to it of like impersonating sex noises, asking for panties to be brought upstairs. Like there is something a little bit nefarious about whatever
Yeah.
spirit was mimicking.
Like it's spying on you while you're having sex and stuff. That is so
My God.
disgusting.
That just reminds me of a meme we posted to our Instagram recently at Let's Get Haunted for anyone interested, where it was like, oh, don't mind the demon, he's just gonna watch. And it's just a black void sitting
Yeah.
in the cuck chair in the corner of the hotel room.
Yeah, it's like, don't mind the entity. He's just there to watch.
Here is our next mimic story. This one comes from user TechnoCloudMao5, posted to r/paranormal 5 years ago. Title of the post is, I think there's a mimic in my house, but it's mimicking me. Quote, I have experienced paranormal things since I was a child. I have always been open and receptive to paranormal stuff, and possibly to a fault. When I started dating my now husband, I would tell him all sorts of stories of things that I had experienced throughout my childhood, teenage years, and into adulthood. He has always been fascinated by the paranormal, and my stories always intrigued him, but he never experienced anything himself until we moved in together. I've always been convinced that I had a clinger spirit that has attached itself to me somewhere in my life and just stayed along for the ride. We've lived in different locations and always experienced the same thing at each home. It was never anything malicious, and I always joked that my Casper was just doing things to say hi and letting me know that he's there. My husband always laughed it off because there was never really an issue and everything seemed harmless and playful. We have walked into our offices with our desk chairs spinning while no one else was in the room. We have smart TVs and they all rotate, turning on in the middle of the night as if someone else is trying to watch TV, scrolling through the apps to select Netflix or Hulu. I've also just seen it run through the different HDMI options. Items that have specific locations, like keys, will always end up in the most random of places, like underneath the kitchen sink or in a sock drawer. We shut our closet doors at night and will wake up with them wide open. I can't sleep if there is even a sliver of light showing in my room, and any light will wake me up from a dead sleep. I wake up to the bathroom light switching on quite often, which requires me to get out of bed and turn it back off so I can go back to sleep. My husband's computer powers on by itself sometimes, and it's a big tower with a power button that takes a little bit of effort to push. We've become used to these sorts of things, but lately something else has started, and I think it's mimicking me. Lately, when I'm downstairs and my husband is in his office upstairs, he will walk to the landing of our stairwell and ask me if I'm calling his name. Usually, if I need something or have a question for him, I'll just call his cell if I'm upstairs, since I'm too lazy to go up or down, especially if I'm in the middle of cooking and can't leave the stove. Even when I'm laying down in bed and he's on his computer in the same room, he will pull off his headphones and ask me what I need. For a while, I was thinking, am I losing my mind? Am I actually saying something and not realizing it? He has stopped gaming midstream to come find me, aggravated that I'm calling him and interrupting his session when I literally haven't said a word. Every time I tell him that I didn't say his name, he gets this confused look like he's trying to read my face to see if I'm telling him the truth or if I'm just fucking with him. Yesterday was the turning point. I was laying in bed reading and he threw a bottle of water on the bed next to me. I asked him why he brought me a bottle of water, and he said, "Do you not remember asking me for water?" I told him no and pointed to a bottle of water on the nightstand that I brought to bed when I laid down. He said, "You literally just yelled down for me to bring you a cold bottle of water." I explained to him very calmly that I did not say that because I had my own cold water that I had already brought to bed. After that, we both agreed that something really strange is happening because this has just started within the last month. And I don't know if this is my entity that I've already had and has been following me throughout my life and maybe is just now becoming vocal, or if this is something new and entirely different. We're both of sound mind, and neither of us have any sort of mental health issue, at least that we're aware of, that would have me speaking without knowing it or have him hearing things that aren't really there. Aside from extreme annoyance, is there a real cause for concern? Let me know what you guys think. Thanks.
That's like very alarming. Also, I don't know if I could like trust my boyfriend after that. Like, I would feel like, I don't know, something about them is not quite right. Like, are they having relations with the mimic?
Again, it's just the whole idea of mimicry is very intimate and deceptive. Like, okay, so why is the entity choosing to impersonate me to prey upon my partner? Why is the mimic not choosing to imitate my partner to prey upon me? And also, it's scary because, I don't know, I'm sure we've all, even as children, like you get accused of doing something you didn't do. And it feels very violating because you're like, why don't you believe me? I'm telling the truth. Yeah, so I could see how this would tear apart a relationship, especially if you were in a relationship with a skeptic, because they're not going to be like, oh, it's a mimic. You know what I mean? They're just going to be like, you're lying to me.
I remember when I was in high school, it was like my freshman or sophomore year. I don't know. I had a flip phone. It was a long time ago, guys. And my like best friend at the time said that I sent her like a dick pic. And I was like, what? I definitely did not. And I like went through my messages and I was like, I didn't. And she was like, no, I was there. Like, I saw it. I know you did. Like, you did or your boyfriend did. And I was like, we've been together the entire night. I've had my phone the whole night. Like, whatever you think you saw or didn't see, like, I promise it wasn't me. And, like, first of all, my boyfriend would never do that because it's super weird and violating. But also, even if, let's say he was, like, a closeted serial killer and tried to do that, he couldn't have because he was here with me the whole time and I've had my phone. And I remember, like, the fight getting into her with that was, like, so dramatic because she seriously believed that I had sent her a dick pic. And I was, like, not willing to just be like, yeah, I did it, because I didn't. And
right.
It like has stayed with me forever, like how frustrated I was and of trying to like convince her that I didn't. And I remember like seeing her at school and she was just like, I can't believe you did that. And I was like getting so frustrated that I like wanted to commit violence on her. Like I wanted to just like punch her because I was so sick of like defending this. I mean, I didn't, but I'll just never forget that frustrating. Like you're right. It is so violating when someone accuses you of something that you know you haven't done, or like they're just confused, or it's just like a misunderstanding or something. I don't know. She was also like an alcoholic, so like it could have been anything could have happened, you know? But yeah,
Did she ever show you the alleged dick pic or text?
No. And I asked her to. I was like, show me then. She was like, I deleted it because it was gross. And I was like, well, is there like, okay, let's play devil's advocate. Maybe something did get sent to you from my pocket or something like that. Are you sure it was a dick pic? Like, was it not just like a blurry in like, you know, my hand photo or something, like if that was to happen? And she was like, no, it was definitely a penis. I know what I saw. And I was like, it was so weird. Maybe that was a
bizarre.
mimic. I don't know. Or maybe she was just on one. I don't know. It was the weirdest thing ever.
That is so bizarre. That would take it to another level of horror if a mimic could get a hold of your social media or your phone number and pretend to be you and send people like things that are embarrassing or just act in a way that you don't act at all. Ooh, I wonder if now that we're fully in the digital age, if people have had mimicry happening through technology.
What if
that
it,
would be scary.
What if it like makes a whole Instagram page of you, or like a LinkedIn?
No. Oh my
what
God.
What if you're scrolling through LinkedIn and you find yourself as like a mimic?
It's like a post
scary.
of you, like really cringy, like, let me tell you 5 things I learned about B2B sales based on my failed relationship with my partner who is a Navy SEAL that got dishonorably discharged. And you're reading it and you're like, this is not me. I've never been in a relationship with someone who's been dishonorably discharged from the Navy. I don't care about B2B sales. This is so cringe.
Dude,
well,
yeah.
This person provided a follow-up post, okay, that has some more information that I think is really spooky. Update. Thank you everyone for your comments and private messages from my first post regarding the mimic in my house. You've provided great suggestions and theories, all of which my husband and I discussed on a long drive, as we didn't want to talk about it in the house where we might be overheard. With this update, I may be able to cross a few of your suggestions off the list. We've tested for leaks and learned that we do not have any in our home, thank God. No natural gas leaks, no carbon monoxide leaks, everything is fine. We also came up with an idea to text each other for a week when he hears me calling to him while we're in separate rooms. We've been successful, but I also believe it's become a catalyst to the entire situation. I feel like we've annoyed whatever it is because we're not having that verbal conversation about it any longer. I call it a catalyst because it's now happening to me too. Within the last week, I've had 2 instances where I've heard, quote, my husband, or whatever's impersonating him, talk to me. Once in the laundry room asking if we had dinner plans when he was actually on a conference call in his office. The other instance was a couple days ago down the hall from our bedroom when he asked me if I'd seen his sketchbook, which is a custom-made, hand-sewn, leather-bound book that I purchased for him 8 years ago. It is his most cherished gift from me and is kept in a very specific spot. This entity does move things from time to time, but this book is very heavy and stays on his drafting table when he isn't using it. Both times I asked my husband if he'd said those things, and both times he said no. He has heard my voice a few times in the past week as well. Twice calling his name and asking if he has seen my phone, and once asking if he'd grab me a drink. Previously, someone asked if he only hears me calling to him when he has headphones on. But in these 2 instances, he wasn't wearing any headphones, so we've been able to rule that out. A few other strange things have started happening that weren't happening previously. The TVs have turned on by themselves since my first post, but we have a salt lamp that sat on my husband's bedside table that now flickers 5 times before the light stays solid. We've moved it to a few different outlets near his desk and changed the bulb, but neither has made a difference. We also have 2 fans in our bedroom, a ceiling fan and a standing fan, and both have been turned off in the middle of the night. To me, that's worse than the TVs turning off because I rely on that sound, that white noise, and constant breeze to sleep comfortably. So as soon as they turn off, which is within seconds of each other, I wake up. Neither fan is set on a timer, we've both checked. The bathroom lights continue to turn on randomly at night, and we still wake up to the closet doors opened in the morning after closing them the night before. I also explained in the comments of the first post that I did mess with a Ouija board when I was about 16. Nothing significant ever came of those few times to my knowledge, as we just ended up blaming each other for moving the planchette. Since my first paranormal memory is from when I was about 4, I don't feel this current situation was brought on from my teenage stupidity. I believe it's still some clinging ghost trying to get attention or something attached to the house or property specifically. We've purchased sage but haven't burned it yet because I want to make sure we're doing it correctly first. I've heard numerous ways to do it. Windows open, windows shut, and I just don't want to do anything that agitates this and makes it worse. I've also been in touch with my family's pastor. We have a meeting scheduled next week to sit down and go over everything so we can come up with a plan of how he may be able to help us. We still don't feel like we're in danger, but it's becoming very clear that something really is happening due to how persistent it is trying to get our attention. Again, thank you all for your advice and theories. If you have any other suggestions, I welcome them all.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get an update after the pastor because that's what I need is an update with the pastor.
Right? I need a resolution, but no, there's no resolution thus far. So I'm going to send you the next story.
Okay, this one is posted in r/paranormal by u/usual courage 1295. I think we have a mimic. Hello. Okay, so I think we have a mimic in our house or following myself. I don't know if that's possible, but something's going on. To preface, we're a family of 5. Myself, female 26, my husband, male 31, and 3 kids, 7, 2, and 0. We're renting and from Australia. My husband works afternoon shift and gets home around midnight. So recently we've had an increase in paranormal activity around our home. Prior to this, it was just personal experiences and I was alone in my experiences and just kind of assumed I was a little nuts. But now, my partner has experienced things and I even caught something on video, which it won't let me attach for some reason. Here's a list of random experiences. My 2-year-old has a midday nap. I heard him get up, shuffle down the hallway, and saw him out of the corner of my eye peeking around the corner as if he was playing peekaboo. When he never popped back out, I got up to see him, and he wasn't there. He was still sound asleep in his bed with the door closed. He can't reach the door handle yet either. A few weeks ago, I was trying to get my 2-year-old to sleep in my bed. While we were laying there, I heard the sound of my 2-year-old crying over his monitor while he was with me. It was terrifying. I cried. About a week ago, we switched our kids' rooms around. That night, I was again laying in bed with my toddler. I heard the sound of my 7-year-old singing and talking over the monitor, but quite muffled. Their rooms are now neighboring, so I assumed it was picking up sound from his room. I got up to tell my kid to be quiet and go to sleep, but he was asleep. I even shook him to see if he was pretending. He was dead asleep. This is what I caught on video. I recorded the noise coming through the monitor. My partner has heard doors slam at night. My 7-year-old's alarm clock started going off at random hours of the night. We have that feeling of being watched when we're up after midnight making bottles or up with the kids that won't sleep. Also, I've been having experiences my whole life, thinking I hear my partner come home, but he's not home yet. I even got out of bed one night, heard him get up with me and follow me out to the kitchen, only to turn around and find myself alone. The activity seems to have significantly increased and has happened in lots of houses, not just this one alone. I don't know what it is, what to do, or anything. Is it targeting my children since it's copying them, or is it targeting us or me? Should I be worried?
That one is creepy because
So
anything
creepy.
involving children is like, come on, spirits. Children are off limits, okay?
Something, first of all, playing peekaboo is already so scary. But then if it's like pretending to be your kid, I hate that. Yeah, I don't like that at all.
It also kind of reminds me of the changeling folklore that I mentioned during part 1 of this episode. Because is the mimic that's mimicking a child trying to get you to think it's a child so that it can replace your child eventually? I don't know. Like, there's just something about it that is so unsettling to me.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, that's so creepy. If it replaces your child, does it like grow like your child would? Like, do you
Right.
raise it? You know, like, does it become a teenager and like drive and like get a girlfriend and like all that kind of
My
stuff?
God. I mean, that sounds almost wholesome. I think, look, if the demons and spirits want to be nice to me, I think it's fine. But what's happening to my real child or my real
Right.
spouse or like, where did they go? Is it like changeling folklore where they become servants in the spirit
Yeah.
world? I don't think that's nice at all.
What if the mimic is like, you know, okay, I'm thinking of a few scenarios. Like, what if the mimic, you know, you do raise it or whatever, and it's like nervous. It's wondering if it's gonna get into the college it wants to go to,
Oh,
you know, or like it
Right.
gets signed to like a crazy professional football team or something. Like, what if it's like super gifted?
Wow. Worth
Then
it.
would you not care? Would you be like, yeah, that's my son?
Yeah. Be like, all right, well, maybe it was good that the fairies replaced my original child because you're very successful and wealthy. These are so creepy. Like, imitating your partner feels too intimate. Imitating your children feels,
Illegal.
and yeah, illegal. All of these feel like very illegal things. But let's talk about a mimic that tried to lure somebody out of their house now. This was posted to r/paranormal by user specific attempt 9057. I lived in the same house my entire childhood and teenage life. In that time, I experienced countless paranormal/unexplained events, many of which being from what I've heard people call mimics. The house, owned by my father, was fairly new, built in the 80s, and as far as I know, no one ever died in the house or on the property. However, I have heard locals talk about how the surrounding location was where a few Native American tribes used to live. So I've kind of always chalked up any activity to that, maybe. Like maybe the land was taken illegally from people and there's just bad vibes. I have several experiences I could recount, but for now, I will share one of the most bone-chilling. Once I reached about 13 years old, my parents started letting me stay home alone with my older brother, who's about 2 years ahead of me, on the days that they were at work. However, this particular day, my brother was gone at sports, and he usually wouldn't get home from school until about 2 hours after I did. I would get dropped off on the bus, and he'd come home on his bike after practice. Anyway, as I mentioned above, my whole life, I experienced weird activity in that house. I want to say my first encounter was around 5 years old. So, at 13 years old, I had seen enough to be creeped out when I was home alone. Also, whenever I was home alone, the energy always just felt so much stronger. I would walk in the house and my hair would practically stand straight up. So, On the days both my parents were at work, I developed this routine of checking the house with a knife before locking myself in the bathroom with it and playing games on my phone until I heard my brother get home. It's kind of odd I'd gravitate towards the bathroom, but I think I did this because it's a well-lit, small-sized room with a door that locked. Also, with the wall always to my back, it eliminated the possibility of something creeping up behind me. Everywhere else in the house felt like something was breathing down my neck, so the bathroom kind of became my safe space. One day, about an hour into my routine bathroom hideaway, I hear the signature squeak of the side door leading from the garage into the house. I then hear what sounds like my brother's footsteps walking into the main area/kitchen of the house, throwing his keys down on the table, and letting out one of his loud, very identifiable burps. Kind of funny how you can tell which family member it is by the sound of their footsteps and noises of their gas, but I digress. Finally, I think to myself, feeling a wave of relief wash over me now that someone's finally home and I can stop hiding in the bathroom with a knife. I set my phone down and stand up, ready to leave the bathroom. But the moment my hand reaches for the doorknob to unlock it and step out to say hi, a chill runs through me. Something instinctual was telling me to pump the brakes. Something was not right. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it's almost like when you see an image that looks real, but then upon further inspection, you realize it's just AI. I don't know, that's the best way I can describe it. It just felt uncannily artificial in a way. Maybe it's because my brother would always come through the front door, not the garage. Also, he'd keep his keys in his room, not on the table. IDK, something about it just wasn't lining up for me. So I texted my brother, "Are you home?" To which he immediately replied, "Nope, leaving practice now." My blood ran cold. As soon as I read his message, all the noises in the main area of the house just stopped. For a moment, it was dead quiet. And then, all of a sudden, I heard the kitchen stools getting dragged across the tile floor. Not thrown, not shoved, but dragged, like someone was picking up the edge of the stool and quickly walking it out of the kitchen into the living room. I immediately text my brother back, saying, "Hey, I think there's someone in the house." Just then, I hear my dog leap onto the couch. The cushions make that familiar squeak, and she starts growling and snarling at something. I'm sitting in the bathroom, silently crying my eyes out, gripping the knife I have with me like it's my lifeline, and being careful to not make a peep of noise. At this point, it sounds like stuff is being tossed around. My dog is barking like crazy. Naturally, I'm confused because I vividly heard my brother just a moment ago, but now it sounds like a massive, giant man is just thumping around the house, ransacking it. I would have called the police, but this really did feel supernatural, and I didn't want to look like a lunatic if the police showed up and found nothing. A few minutes of this noise goes by and then ceases immediately when my brother texts me, "Hey, I'm home now, about to walk in." I hear him come in the front door and say something like, "Hello? Hello? Hey, no one's here. You can come out now." So I decide to come out of the bathroom. After I stepped out of the bathroom, I thought for sure the house would be a total mess from all the racket I heard. But to my shock, everything was exactly as I left it. Nothing was out of place, damaged, or even touched. The garage door that I heard swing open? Nope, it was locked from the inside the whole time and never budged. The only sign that something was off was my dog, who was still on the couch with her fur standing up, looking terrified. This was almost 10 years ago now, but recounting it still chokes me up and gives me the goosebumps. I came to the conclusion that it must have been a mimic of some sort trying to lure me out of the bathroom or possibly out of the house entirely that day. And when I didn't take the bait, it got angry and became aggressive. I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I've encountered a mimic a few other times in this house, and I'll share that if anyone is interested. Side note, I do feel the need to address that I'm not schizophrenic and I have no mental health concerns, nor is anyone else in my family. I also was not on any drugs. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Thanks.
Oh my God. That whole story just gave me the heebie-jeebies, but just thinking about too, like walking around your house with a knife, that's like a level of delusional that I don't know if I would ever get to. What's gonna happen? You see something, you're just gonna stab it to death? Like,
I know,
you see
like,
an
what
intruder,
can you
you're gonna
do?
stab an intruder to death?
I mean, I guess if the intruder is gonna stab you first, then you better stab it first before it does to you. But yeah, like, you can't stab a ghost. I
Is
would
this
assume.
in a country where, like, citizens can't have guns? Is that why they have a knife? I don't know. That just seems crazy as fuck to me.
I mean, they
wouldn't-
were a child, so they probably just didn't have access to a gun, I would assume, because I don't think you can give
No
your
child
child a
guns.
gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about guns to know whether or not children are allowed to handle them, but I would assume no.
Right. I would assume it's like frowned upon to just leave a gun out for your child to grab and use, but who knows?
That story, the dog saw whatever it was. I wish we could interview the dog and be like, what did it look
Right.
like? You know?
No, for sure. Yeah, I wish I could just see the world through a dog's eyes occasionally as well. I think about that all the time with my two dogs. I'm like, what are they thinking right now? Is every day just like, I'm awake, I'm eating food, please pet my belly, take me on a walk? Or is it like hopes and dreams, you know? Like, do they
Right.
want to go to college? Do they want to get their law degree?
Right. Are they like, I wonder what's coming in the mail today? Do you think it'll be a long, skinny envelope or
Yeah.
more of a package? I think they have hopes and dreams.
I think so too, but like, what are they? I'm so curious. I just want to know more about my dog. I really is like what it comes down to. I feel like Winnie, I have two dogs, Winnie and Littlefoot. Littlefoot, I think, doesn't think much, but Winnie, I feel like there's a person in there. Well, so far we've only talked about auditory mimics, so I just wanted to do a few short ones about visual mimics because those are very creepy to me. So this one was posted to r/paranormal by a user going by the name Eclipsed Griffey. Quote, so my 6-year-old son saw a mimic yesterday. Me and my wife were downstairs entertaining our other kids when my eldest son came quite quickly down the stairs and was rather freaked out. With a little prying, he tells us he just saw me upstairs in our room, which is opposite his, slowly backing away into the darkness with white glowing eyes and a creepy smile, looking straight at him. What freaks me out is I do stuff like this with him. I'll do that to make him jump, and then he runs into my room to quote-unquote attack me. But the fact that this thing must have known doing this would normally draw him into the room really made my blood run cold. Luckily, my boy has a good head on his shoulders and instantly realized it was not me. Time to do a house cleansing, I think.
That person is like way too casual about this, I feel, you know? Like, they're just like, yeah, someone's impersonating me to try to possibly steal the place of my child, but I guess that's life, you know? That's so creepy. I don't think I could even, like, live in the same house. I don't think a cleansing would do.
Right. If your child said, Mama, I saw you in your room, but you had a big smile and white glowing eyes and you just backed slowly into the darkness and disappeared. Like, what do you even fucking do?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just go check in immediately into, like, a mental hospital, and you're just like, I cannot leave this place for quite some time.
Yeah, sorry guys. I am checking out officially. I'm no longer a mother. It's too creepy. Like, I can no longer participate in this family, this house, or society. It's like that Tim Robinson sketch from I Think You Should Leave where he's like, for a split second, I thought there was monsters in the world. When it's like actually his neighbor threw a pig with a mask on through his doggy door.
My life is nothing I thought it should be and everything I was worried it would become because for 50 seconds I thought there was monsters on the world.
All right, this next one comes from Parasaur Matthew, who says, I've seen and heard quite a few mimics. They aren't very creepy or anything, at least to me. My dad woke me up once, shaking me awake and telling me to get up in a very urgent tone he rarely used. I didn't turn around to face him or anything, just fell back asleep after hearing heavy footsteps walk off. Later, woke up in a panic thinking I had missed an appointment or something. He said he hadn't even left his room. The second time this happened, I woke up and felt like I was being watched. This time, I did open my eyes and I glanced over to the bathroom door, and my sibling was standing there staring at me. They slowly moved over to the edge of my bed, like weirdly slow, almost like in slow motion. I sat up and told them to go back to bed. Later, when I asked my sibling what they were doing in my room, they said that they hadn't been there and that they'd actually been awake and reading a book that entire time. So it couldn't have been them. That house was so creepy, and I know they wouldn't head downstairs in the middle of the night no matter what. I offered to bring them back up, but they didn't seem to register anything I was saying. So they sat down, and it was pretty much a wordless staring contest with this weird thing imitating my sibling staring at me. Eventually, they left in that same slow motion walk, and I fell back asleep and asked them about it in the morning. Yep, they never left their room. I barely slept at all while I lived in that house. It was always loud, and every night brought something different. Anytime I would sleep, I would just be startled awake by something. The last one I can remember was my sister coming home, the front door opening and slamming with her yelling at us, saying she was home before hearing her jog downstairs. She was supposed to be at work, so my mom and I exchanged glances, and I went down to go see what she was doing there. I looked everywhere, and all of the rooms were empty, and the whole house was quiet. The door never opened again, and everyone in the house at the time was upstairs. We messaged both her and my older sister, and both of them said that they were not home and never came home. I kind of wish I got to see what had opened the door, if that makes sense. Everyone in the house heard it, so that one I can confirm wasn't brought on by sleep deprivation or a hallucination. Weird stuff, really. The first two happened at my grandma's house, where one person had passed away, but I really don't think it was them doing the imitating. The second was in our old home. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, once again, I feel like these people are being way too casual about how haunted this is. Like your sibling slow motion walking towards you in bed. Then you ask about them and they're like, no, I was just reading. Like, okay, the visual on that is so creepy. Slow motion walking is very, very creepy unless it's like done moonwalking. Unless you're moonwalking, do not walk slow towards me ever.
Yeah. Yeah, unless you're in some sort of slow motion walking contest or you're doing like a cool robot move, like I don't want anything to do with it. You're right. It is sinister. Like just get to me at a normal pace. Also the idea that whatever was imitating the sibling came and sat down at the edge of the bed and was just staring. Oh, it's so fucking gross to me.
It's reminding me of that movie Smile, which I didn't see, but I like saw the promo for it where they would just hire actors to go sit at like the Dodgers game and be on camera and just like smiling in the background.
Oh my God, you're so right. What if the mimics are just part of a viral marketing campaign for some like
ghosts?
Paranormal object? Yeah, for ghosts. It's just it's just a campaign for ghosts. Just bringing awareness. That's it.
Awareness to the supernatural. Yeah. I like that.
Well,
yeah.
This next one is super short and casual as well. This comes from Aquariox2601, who said, I woke up in the middle of the night once to see what looked like myself standing next to my partner over his side of the bed. It was definitely me, with my makeup, my hair, and was wearing a kimono type thing, which at the time I used to wear a few of, but I didn't have one in the black and orange silk pattern that this thing was wearing. When she/it noticed I was staring at it, it scurried straight out of our bedroom door and vanished. What do you guys think?
Scurried? Like a roach? That's disgusting.
Like fucking scary and creepy for sure.
Also, I want to know what the boyfriend thought.
Well, the boyfriend, I don't know. The boyfriend, it sounds like, was asleep. But like, you just wake up and there's like a doppelganger of you staring over you. I don't know why. We've talked about this before. Doppelgangers really get my goat. Like, there's a lot of paranormal topics we talk about where I'm like, that's not scary. I would like to experience it, but I never want to fucking see a mimic of myself ever.
What if you were a twin and like your twin got replaced by a mimic? And
you would
were,
know
like,
for sure, right?
Yeah, you would know. But like no one else would know. They would just be like, no, that's your twin. And you would be like, no, there's something different about this twin. And they would be like, shut up, you're going in a cage.
Yeah, shut up, you're going to jail. Oh my God,
yeah.
So scary. All right, here's the last one. This one comes from Itty Bitty 216. Around 15 years ago, when both my kids were toddlers, I was putting them to bed one night, and my son was adamant that he wear his favorite red race car pajamas. I happily obliged, helped him change into them, and tucked him into bed. Then I sat down at my kitchen table with a friend who had come over to chat and catch up. The way that my apartment was set up, you could see my kid's bedroom doorway from the kitchen table. My friend and I were talking for a while before we were suddenly interrupted by the sound of my son screaming. We both turned and looked at the bedroom doorway and saw my son standing there loudly crying/shrieking and wearing his green pajamas with the airplanes on them. Everything inside of me was screaming. This was wrong. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end and a cold shiver shot down my spine. My friend and I wordlessly stared at each other for a second. We both knew that my son couldn't have changed his pajamas by himself yet. He was too young. We looked back at the doorway, and just as quickly as he had appeared, my son was gone. We ran to the bedroom and found him tucked in bed, fast asleep, snoring peacefully in his red race car pajamas. My friend asked me if I saw him standing there in his green airplane pajamas screaming, and I confirmed that yes, I had. My friend promptly freaked out and left. I slept on my kids' bedroom floor that night to make sure nothing happened to them. My friend and I still talk about it to this day. It's one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me. My son, of course, doesn't remember any of it, but he loves hearing the story of how his doppelganger scared the crap out of us. Or maybe it was a mimic, LOL. Who knows?
See, I feel like that's the only appropriate reaction, to just like be like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Whatever that was not normal, and I will be leaving now.
I'm never coming back to your house, you fucking scary bitch, and I'm not talking to your son ever again either.
That's the thing about the mimics is I feel like it's not a victimless act. Or no, what's the opposite? I feel like the person who's getting mimicked did something bad to become mimicked. And I know that's like technically victim shaming, but that's just how I feel.
Your son didn't want to go to bed and was making a fuss, and so now there's a mimic of him. That actually might be a good way to get your child to behave. Just be like, if you don't fucking do what I ask you to do, there's going to be a demon that comes in and impersonates you and does something really bad.
Yup.
All right, well, now we get to the end of the episode, part 4, the theories. And as always, I have these in order from most skeptical to least skeptical. So theory number 1 is that stories of mimics are just a cautionary tale. And here's my argument for this one. The concept of mimics, doppelgangers, and spirit impersonators can be interpreted not as a literal phenomena, but as moral or social tools. Cautionary tales devised to maintain order and pass down cultural values. In many traditional societies, stories of entities that imitate loved ones or take familiar shapes to deceive people serve as allegories for the dangers of temptation, disobedience, or straying from communal norms. A tale warning that a false version of your mother calls you into the woods, for example, reinforces the importance of staying close to home and not disobeying or trying to leave your community or go out on your own. These myths also reinforce trust within one's in-group, urging listeners to rely on intuition and community bonds to detect deceit. In essence, the mimic becomes a narrative embodiment of moral vigilance, a reminder that evil often disguises itself in comfort and familiarity, and that survival depends on not just fear of the unknown, but on respect for the rules and wisdom handed down through generations. Natalia, your thoughts?
It's not my favorite. I feel like there's going to be more.
Oh yeah, there's definitely more. Here we go. Theory number 2, getting a little more haunted. Neurological disorders. It's entirely plausible that the folkloric idea of mimics and doppelgangers could trace its origins back to what we now recognize as prosopometamorphosia. I'm pronouncing that totally wrong. Its abbreviation is PMO. Natalia, have you ever heard of this neurological disorder?
No, it makes you see mimics, or it makes you act differently, and so then people think you're not yourself?
That's a good guess. It's actually a little more haunted. It's a known neurological distortion of facial perception. So I'm going to send you a diagram of what people with this condition see faces as. Just sent it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they kind of look like elves. Yeah, so it's like the eyes have been pulled out to be a lot longer than they are naturally, and then there's 2 really big wrinkles in the forehead, and then really big wrinkles on the sides of the mouth, and the mouth are like really, really long. And the nostrils are really wide, and the ears are pointy. Like, they literally look like elves. That's so weird that there's a medical condition that makes you see people as elves. Like,
yeah,
what the hell?
Right? And so I'm going to read a little blurb from The Science Kingdom on Instagram, who created this chart and put a little explainer underneath it. And it says, prosopometamorphosia is a visual disorder characterized by altered perceptions of faces. People with this condition see facial features as distorted, such as drooping, swelling, discoloration, and position shifts. Researchers at Dartmouth College created images mimicking PMO distortions based on a patient's experience, aiming to raise awareness and aid diagnosis. So, in this theory, we can say that maybe in ancient times, when medical understandings of the brain was non existent, individuals experiencing PMO would have had no framework for explaining why familiar faces suddenly appeared monstrous, warped, or subtly off. Seeing one's loved one's features melt, elongate, or twist into inhuman expressions could easily be interpreted as evidence of possession, spiritual imitation, or even an evil double replacing the real person. These terrifying visual distortions, combined with the human brain's instinctive fear of near-human forms, aka the uncanny valley effect, might have fueled centuries of folklore about spirits or entities that mimic others to deceive or harm. What ancient witnesses experienced as supernatural imposters may have just been early undiagnosed episodes of PMO. Points toward this might be PMO can be brought on later in life by things like dementia, strokes, traumatic brain injuries, and so it is possible that someone could perceive someone to look quote unquote normal up until something happens, and then now they're like, you're not my real spouse, you're not my real son.
It doesn't explain some of the stories, though, where, like, the clothes were different, you know? That
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
explain that.
Yeah, in order to buy this theory, you have to believe that the more modern stories where people see a doppelganger and then see the real person in a different room looking normal, you'd have to believe that those stories are lies, you know?
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Kind of going along with this theory, we can also talk about exploding head syndrome, sleep issues, insomnia, different sorts of things that can bring on auditory and visual hallucinations that are all skeptic theories. But let's move on to theory number 3, a thought form. For this theory, we can argue that if mimics exist, they might not be creatures in the traditional sense at all. They could be thought forms, born from the collective imagination of humans fixated on the idea of being deceived by something familiar. The concept started as fiction, such as in the examples of early books that use the term mimic, sci-fi tropes, spooky stories, a campfire whisper. But over time, the sheer number of people envisioning, fearing, and describing mimics could have given the idea its own energetic footprint. Paranormal theorists that believe this one suggest that enough beliefs can shape reality, creating tulpas, entities that emerge from concentrated thought. In this view, mimics don't have motives because they don't need them. They're echoes of human anxiety itself. They act out of the fears of being tricked, replaced, or unloved, mirroring our own projections back to us. This would mean that every online post, every late night Reddit thread, or horror movie about mimics feeds into this loop. It reinforces the thought form, strengthening it until the story starts to stare back at us.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I really do believe, like, in manifesting. Like, I think if you're, like, a genuinely, like, loving, positive, kind person, you will manifest more loving, genuine, kind things to happen to you that will, like, continue a feedback loop. Or if you're, like, haunted, you're going to manifest more haunted things to happen to you in, like, a feedback loop. And that itself is kind of like the idea of a thought form, right? Like giving power to something by naming it and thinking of it, you know? It's kind of like manifesting it in a way. So I like that theory.
Yeah, and for people that are new to this theory and don't have any experience with it, the most popular quote-unquote tulpa or thought form, there's two. One is Slender Man, which we know started as a creepypasta, like a fictional story that now some people think Slender Man really exists because enough people believed in him. Or another example is the Rake, which we've covered in a past episode. So moving on to theory number 4, harmless spirits. This theory says that maybe these are just chaotic ghosts that are pulling pranks, spirits that want to express human emotions, and that the mimics are absolutely real, but they're not to be feared and they're not malicious. They're simply playful spirits, curious fragments of energy that have learned how to slip into familiar forms to feel what it's like to be alive again. Imagine a ghost that misses laughter, love, or the warmth of a family home. What better way to experience it than by borrowing the face of someone nearby? When your pet seems to be in 2 places at once, or your friend's voice calls your name from the next room only to find that you weren't there, maybe it's just a mimic stopping by to share in human emotion for a fleeting moment. Or in the case of mimics that impersonate objects, maybe a mimic is imitating a beloved teddy bear just to feel the warmth of a hug again. These spirits aren't predators, they're imitators driven by wonder and not wickedness. What do you think of that one?
I feel like some of these seem nefarious, like especially the ones that are like copying sex noises and asking for panties and stuff like that. I guess that could be innocent, but I don't know, seems kind of weird.
Well, here's the final theory. Theory number 5, evil spirits. Here's my argument for this one. If you've ever heard your name whispered in an empty house or seen your reflection move a heartbeat too late, you already know what I'm about to tell you. Mimics are real, and they are not friendly. These entities are predators, wearing our own faces to earn our trust before feeding on what makes us human. Some believers say that they are demons, using imitation as camouflage to get close enough to siphon off energy, essence, or even souls. Others believe they are cannibalistic cryptids, ancient creatures that learn to lure prey by mirroring what their victims love most: a voice, a pet, a friend. Their uncanny resemblance is not a mistake or one of convenience. It's intentional bait. They don't need to chase you because they can become something you'd never run from. Every story of the wrong smile on a familiar face, every pet calling from outside when it's already inside, that's a mimic testing the boundaries, reminding us that imitation isn't always flattery. Ha 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 ha.
That is so creepy. When you started talking about demons, I just like kind of had to space out because it was getting too scary. It's like really late here and it's so dark and I'm like in my basement essentially by myself.
Yeah.
And I just don't like the idea of like someone calling my name right now would send me to the grave, I think.
Yeah. And it also kind of reminds me of Not Deer, which we talked about in a previous episode too, where it's some sort of demonic entity
Ew.
impersonating a deer. And you don't know until you get closer and you're like, why is its jaw unhinging very slowly? Why does it have no pupils? Why is it bleeding from the mouth? Why are its legs on backwards? You know, like, I don't know, very, very creepy. But Natalia, that is my episode on mimics. And I'm very curious to know what theory is your favorite, what are your final thoughts on mimics, and which story is going to keep you up late tonight. You can answer one of those, all of them, whatever you feel like. Give me your thoughts.
The story about the like slow walking towards the bed and away from the bed was so creepy, and I feel like that was one that's going to stick with me. The theory that I like is the thought form energy, like the tulpa energy one, where it's like us talking about mimics has kind of made them more prevalent. The one I don't like is this last one, the demons that feed on your soul, that they're just trying to get close to humans to feed on us, is so creepy. And yeah, this was just such a creepy episode. Great job, Alyssa. I was on the
Thank
edge
you.
of my seat and I'm very scared now.
Well, let me know if you have any sleep paralysis tonight, because I know that you have seen entities looming over you in the middle of the night sometimes. So I don't know, maybe one of them is
Thanks.
actually a mimic.
Oh my God. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'll be sure to let you know. Let me know if you are going to get murdered on the way to your truck tonight, walking back from the podcast studio.
Bro, when I leave here, it's usually close to midnight and I straight up sprint. Like people in the nearby neighborhood that are just walking their dogs at night, they just see me straight up sprinting out of this office building every night straight to my car. Before I ask for
Worth
your
it.
sign off, I did want to give a big shout out to our friends at Kryptonaut Podcast, because they covered this topic in 2023 and they did a really great job on it. And I listened to their episode on this to get some ideas for our episode. And so I just wanted to give them a really big shout out. They're dope. They have done huge solids for us that I won't bore everyone with, but they're awesome and we love them. So big shout out
sure
to
do.
Kryptonaut Podcast. And they used entirely different stories for their episodes. So if you guys want to go check that one out, go do so. Nat, can I ask you for our sign off?
You sure can. Okay, let me think about this. RB gonna go walk not slowly to my bed.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Haunties. Welcome to the closing credits for episode 239, Mimics. This month, we would love to give a warm, heartfelt thank you to our Patreon donors who donated to us in the month of August 2025. Letters R through Z. If you'd like to become a donor and hear your name shouted out on a future episode, head over to patreon.com/c/letsgethaunted, where you will not only get a shout out, but you'll also get access to episode extras, mini-sodes, personal hauntings, live streams, and much, much more. This week, we'd like to thank Rachel, Rachel M, Rachel T, Ray M, Rain, Raven, Raven, Ravine, Rayleigh R, Riley R, Rebecca B, Rebecca H, Red Moon, Red Sands, Ray S, Rhea Bobia, Richard O, Rita S, Rivier, Rob D, Robert K, Robert W, Robin N, Broder, Robin P, Rory L, Rose M, Roxanne S, Roxy, Ruben P, Ruby V, Sage S, Sam P, Samantha D, Samantha H, Samantha P, Sarah W, Sarah D, Sarah J, Sarah L, Sarah R, Sarah Z, Savannah C, Sav H, Sazzle, Scamantha, Scarlett M, Scott G, Selena F, Selena F, Set D, Shane, Shania Z, Sean H, She's Not Here, formerly Al H, Shelby E, Sid from the Bronx, Simon B, Slampersand, Sleepy Dryad, Sleepy Siren, Slug Bunny, Smokin' Void, Smockin' Void, Soggy Q-Tips, Sophia F, Sophie, Spencer, Steph M, Stephen G, Story, Sugar Bread, Summer J, Summer Joy, T Hart, Tabby J, Tay M, to Jakester, Tanya, Tanya, Tara J, Tara J, Tara J, Tara J, Taryn K, Taylor B, Taylor J, Taylor M, Teethman 27, The Ratmans, Tiana R, Tobacco J, Tracy, Tsunami Sami, Tyler B, Erd Ferguson, Valeria R, Valeria R, Valpal, Vera M, Vara M, Veronica W, Vicky T, Victor A, Victoria C, Victoria L, Wayne C, William A, Wonk Bunny, Y2 in LA, Yas A, Yeti, Yedai, Yvonne R, and Zeke G. Thank you all so much for donating to our Patreon in the month of August 2025. We are eternally grateful to all of our donors. We could not do the show without you. We could not operate without you. We could not pay any of the things that we need to pay, any of our bills without you guys. So we are so appreciative, and we hope that those of you listening along right now who may not be part of the Patreon, consider joining. We've really organized it a lot this year in the past couple of months. We've really gotten our shit together, and we now release a calendar of all of the content that we're going to be producing that month, and we release it the first week of every single month. That way you can see what you're going to get, and we think that that has been a really positive change, and we hope that you guys have all been enjoying it if you are in the Patreon. Now it's time for the secret password. You will be commenting the secret password on the photo dump, and you can enter twice, because if you comment the secret password on the Spotify comments, we are now going to start pulling screenshots from there too to enter you into the raffle. At the end of the year, we do a raffle. We print off and cut out all the times people have commented correctly the secret password on the photo dumps and now also on the Spotify comments. And we're going to go ahead and enter you into that raffle. You're going to win something cool. We don't know what it's going to be yet. We never know what it is until the very last minute. Last year, it was an exclusive mug that I designed. We printed it and we shipped it out to our 2 winners. We draw at least 2 winners every single year from this raffle. So here is your secret password.
My dog went to law school.
See you guys next week. Bye.